Hello, I'm Rico Cavella, and this is your Ageless Body Self-Care Guide. It's your operations manual for your body and for your mind. And the title of today's topic is EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, and what they're all about and why they can be dangerous and what you really need to know to protect yourself from them. And we have a great expert and teacher today. His name is Lloyd Burrell. He's a health researcher. He's author of the Long-Term EMF Protection, and he's founder of the EMF Health Summit. And his website is electricsense.com, where you can get a lot more information and contact with him there. So, Lloyd, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Rico, for the invitation.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming. You're sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. And I also want to thank you for your great work. You know, it's a great service because I think this is a topic that's so important, and not many people still are really aware of it, or if they do, they hear about it, they just kind of go, oh, I don't know, you know. So I think this is going to be something really helpful and really. So let's just jump right in and let's have what is a good definition of EMFs, and then you can talk about why they're dangerous and what the research shows and all that.
So it's a rather a complex topic, actually, but I like to try and keep things simple. So when we're talking about EMFs, I'd rather really talk about devices. So just to give you what EMF means for me, it means electromagnetic fields. Some people say electromagnetic frequency, like you did. Some people say electromagnetic radiation. There's all different terms for it. But what we're really talking about, and this is what people need to understand, is it's all these devices which are kind of taking over our lives. Taking over our lives more recently because of the cell phone, because of the evolution of wireless, because of 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G, which is on the horizon. In fact, it's more than on the horizon. It's part of everyday life for some people in certain parts of the world. So there's really two categories. People have heard of this topic, then they will think cell phone radiation, 5G, but there's in that sort of under that wireless banner, there's a whole load of things like Bluetooth, smart, really just so many different buzzwords, terms. But what we're really talking about is radio frequency, microwave radiation. So that's one category. And then we've got another category, which is the wired electromagnetic fields. And that's really the curious thing, is that people think, well, if it's in a wire, then we're safe. But actually, no. So we're all surrounded, like I'm in an office here, and there's a lot of wires in my little office. Too many for my wife's good. But yeah, it's these wires give off electromagnetic fields, different frequencies, which are man-made. And this is really the problem, is that the research is showing, and I can talk about that in more detail if you like, and talk about solutions, because I'm very solution oriented. But there's a lot of research behind this, all these different kinds of exposures, which are linking these exposures with a lot of different diseases, serious diseases. And that's what's important to understand. And just as a by the by, the reason I'm talking about this, because I am, you know, I'm not a physicist, I'm not an electrical engineer, I'm not a building biologist. I got sick using my cell phone. That's what tipped the balance one day, 2002. And I got very, very sick, and it lasted for years, and nobody could help me. The medical establishment couldn't help me. And I kind of figured this out on my own, not entirely on my own, but with the help of lots of different people. It was a long path, long, arduous path, nearly 10 years. And people are getting sick from this, and they don't know it. And particularly children, and I'd like to just talk about children in some point anyway, but children are particularly vulnerable. So yeah, it's a big subject, and a lot of people are just kind of think they don't really want to know about these dangers, and they just kind of want to believe that their cell phone's safe and everything, and all this wireless is safe. The truth is, it's not.
Well, what I'm getting from what you just said, but it's not only our cell phones. We're getting it from our computers and our TVs, and from wiring in our house and all those things. So the problem is, isn't it? It's kind of cumulative. We're getting bombarded with this radiation microwave radiation from all different sources, and so that's why it's become really dangerous. And so we'll talk about some of the problems that you've seen and some of the research shows. What are some of the problems that they can cause and what people are experiencing?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I'd just like to underline that, what you just said there about it being cumulative. Yeah, because it's all this added together. That's the problem, all these different sources. And then again, it's not just EMFs, it's EMFs with all these other toxins, which we're increasingly exposed to too. Toxins in the air, toxins in our food, toxins in the creams and what we put on our skin and shampoo and everything. We just, all these different chemicals, and it's a combination of all that. That's the problem. The second thing is that these EMFs impact everybody. And this is what the science is saying. They impact everybody. It's not because you can't feel it, because I could literally feel it. Cell phone next to my ear, pain, intense pain, cell phone away, feeling better, but still really in a very bad way in lots of other respects. So how do these EMFs impact you? They impact our health in so many different ways. So how they impacted me was, it literally felt as though there was like a laser beam just like, drilling into the side of my head. It was the pain was intense. And then there was headache. Headaches is very common. So neurological symptoms, nervous problems with nerves, anxiety, depression. It upsets endocrine balance, hormonal system, and just really pretty much. There was a time when I was reading a lot of studies on this, and I was learning about this, and it seemed that every day that go by, I would learn that EMFs impacted us in some other way, some new way, that EMFs could actually adversely affect our health. It's just, the list is endless, frankly. Really, every aspect of our being is impacted, and that's because they impact us at a cellular level. So we're right down to the DNA, the so-called blueprint of our cells, the cell membranes, notably. There's a lot of research on that. We do now understand how EMFs impact us. It's actually, the result is very similar to like nuclear fallout, if you want, like ionizing radiation from X-rays and so on, which kind of everybody knows that's dangerous, but people are thinking, well, no, cell phones and all that, that's safe. Unfortunately not. And the science is really clear. And there are thousands of studies on this, honestly, that because people say, where's the research? But there is so much research. And we're talking peer-reviewed research, gold standard, going back decades, literally decades. Going back, actually, the first research is going back hundreds of years. And then more recently, peer-reviewed research, and a good collection is a bioinitiative report. People want to Google that, bioinitiative report. My website, electricsense.com, has got a lot of research on it too. And yeah, there is just, and this research, so we've got these symptoms so people get electrically sensitive, they can get electrically sensitive, or they can, EMFs can impact us other ways, which lead to, and there are links, the studies are showing this, that these EMFs can cause stroke, contribute to cancer, to leukemia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. Frankly, the list is so long. It's, this is no joke, folks. And again, particularly, I underline, children are particularly vulnerable. And that's why I started talking about this, because I'm a father, I've got kids. And it's when you see what children are doing, how they're using a cell phone, I shouldn't be laughing, it's not funny at all. But, sleeping with the cell phone under the pillow and things like this, it's, wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of research. Honestly, for me, it's black and white. And for a lot of other researchers, it is too. It's really very, very dangerous. Honestly, this is to be taken very seriously. So yeah, it's there is no doubt in my mind that this is a problem, and that's why I've spent over 10 years sharing this information, my website, writing books, EMF Health Summit, and so on, to get the word out on this.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that. And I think that an important point here is too that we're all different. Some people are more sensitive to different things. And so many things that our mainstream medical system, you have some kind of symptoms and they can't figure out what it is, that just definitely could be a factor. That so many different things that you may be experiencing that could be definitely caused from this. So before we get into some things, what you can do to protect yourself, I just want to ask you what I've heard about this new 5G technology, how it's many more times dangerous, and that they're actually building satellites that are going to be, so it's going to be global, so you can't get away from it. It's going to be, 5G is going to be everywhere. And I know there's a lot of people that there's a big movement against this 5G.
There is a big movement against it. In a way, really, 5G is a good thing in the sense that, wow, at least now we're talking about it. And so I've been talking about this online since 2009. I've been researching this since 2002. And when in 2002, nobody knew about this. Nobody was talking about this. And even in 2009, not many. And then we had the whole smart meter thing, which was about 2013, 14. And now we've got 5G. And again, it's like back out there and people are talking about it. People are concerned. Is it really a problem? How big a problem is it? Well, the truth is we don't really, the first point is 5G really, it means many things to many different people because EMFs is all about frequency. It's actually about frequency and wavelength. And already with 5G, different countries and even within different countries, different operators are using different frequencies. And one of the big concerns about 5G is we're going into these very high gigahertz frequencies. So like a cell phone at the moment, most cell phones are using 1 to 2 gigahertz. A gigahertz is 1 billion cycles per second. For instance, the electricity in your electrical wiring is 60 hertz. That's 60 cycles per second. That's back and forth 60 times. Now most people can just about get their head around that. But if I say to you 1 billion cycles a second, then that is like, wow, it's even trying to imagine 1 billion, something happening 1 billion times, and that happens in 1 second, it is uber fast.
Yeah.
And now we're moving into the 5G and frequencies, because these lower frequencies that we've been using for Wi-Fi and for all these different devices, for instance, Wi-Fi is 2.4 gigahertz, or there's a higher frequency at 5 gigahertz. It's getting saturated. It's like we don't realize, but our world is becoming saturated by these frequencies, these man-made frequencies. And so what they're doing is they're introducing, selling off, and in France, actually, right today as we speak, they opened the auction for 5G in France. I live in France. And so it's happening all over the world, and they're selling off these licenses for these different frequency bands. And this is just like, it's bonanza time for our governments, because they sell this off for billions, and governments need money now more than ever with everything that's happening. And we're looking at these higher frequencies. And again, it depends where you live, but we're talking 20 gigahertz, 40, 60, maybe 80 gigahertz in different parts of the world. And the technology, so it's not just a frequency, it's the nature of this signal, the complexity of this signal, because it is amazing technology. And the engineers have really done an amazing job to enable phones to do everything they do, and hats off them for that. But come on, somebody has got to look at the health consequences here, and that's the problem.
Well, I was just going to say, as you mentioned, it always comes down. It's always about the money. It's always the money comes first, as opposed to people's health. And that's the problem that we really need to change, not only in America but all around the world, to create products that, first of all, that function well, but they have to be friendly to our health and to our environment as well. And that's what we're doing. And one thing I just wanted to add before we talk about what we need to do to protect ourselves is, I think a good example is just to experience this for yourself. You know how we're bombarded with all during the day with all these things, but just go out into nature, go out for a hike in the forest, and you'll notice how better you feel, right? You just feel calmer, you feel more energetic just to be away from all this stuff. So that just shows you, get out in nature, get away from, put down all your devices and get away from while, and you'll really notice the difference.
That is excellent advice. And just to finish on the 5G, because there is a lot of misinformation, disinformation about 5G. But what I can tell you very clearly is that 5G is adding an additional band of frequencies, additional radiation, additional exposures, additional man-made radiation into our environment. And that is the problem. That very clearly is a problem, because already with the frequencies that we have, there is an issue. We're at kind of saturation point, and we're adding more. And again, we've got the 60,000 plus satellites in space. We've got in residential areas, we have small cell antennas, perhaps every third or fourth house, right, on the lamppost, right in front of your bedroom window. Nothing you can do about it. You cannot, in the US, you cannot prevent a cell tower being erected on health grounds. How crazy is that? So yeah, just to put that in perspective. So there's all kinds of, and I try and keep a very balanced view on this. So if there's anybody that should be obsessive about this, it's me, because I can still feel this. I don't get symptomatic anymore, but I can still feel these frequencies, and many other people can. About 5%, conservatively 5% of the population. So this is a massive problem. I mean, when you compare that to the coronavirus, for instance, then this is a huge problem, and yet nobody is talking about this. So yeah,
I'm glad you're talking about it. I'm glad we're talking about it. Well, tell us, okay, so tell us how can people find out? I'm sure there's ways to measure if you're getting overexposure. Talk about how people can find out if they're getting overexposed.
So really what I talk about is simple things that people can do. That's what I like to share, because there is, and having an EMF meter is how we can actually know what our exposure is. And at some point in time, you do need to take that path. So I have a little protocol which I can share with you. It's very short and sweet. Sure. It's called the Okay, so I love saying that. It's called the and the is UMM, and U stands for understand. And that's what you're doing now, people. If you're listening to me talking about this, you're beginning to maybe comprehend that, wow, this guy with a funny accent, maybe he's making some sense here. Maybe I should look into this a bit further. So the first, is to understand about the frequencies, understand about, there's 4 different kinds of EMFs, which is radio frequency radiation I mentioned, electric fields, magnetic fields, that's on electrical wiring, and dirty electricity, that's also on electrical wiring. So they're the 4 things. So that's the kind of thing you're beginning to understand. So the first thing is understanding, because until you begin to understand this, you're not actually, you're not going to do anything until you begin to understand. And then when you realize that, well, yeah, perhaps I ought to do something here, and that's the motor to do anything, is understanding. And then the M after the U is to measure. And that's what you mentioned, Rico. So to measure at some point, so maybe not today, but some point down the line, you need to measure. And you can do that with what's called an EMF meter, and there's different meters. And I recommend multifunction meters. For instance, the Tri-Field TF2, T for Teddy, F for Freddy, number 2, Tri-Field. There's information on my website about that. I've got a review, and simple meters, inexpensive, $150. So I know some people, that's a lot of money, others not so much money, but that with that meter you can do so much. And the third is to mitigate. Okay, so UMM, third is to mitigate, and there's 3 ways to mitigate. Firstly, you turn the darn thing off, whatever it is. Okay, so if it's your cell phone, you turn it off. Whatever that device is that's causing the problem, you turn it off. Sometimes you can't always turn it off, but sometimes you can increase the distance between you and the device. So you increase the distance. And the thing with EMFs is that generally, when you increase the distance, your exposure falls off exponentially. And all I mean by that is it falls off really big time. Okay, even just a few millimeters can actually make, with a cell phone, you can get thousands of times less exposure by gaining a few, thousands of times, yes. So turn off, increase distance, and last but not least, shield. And when people do kind of become EMF aware, then that's the thing they kind of run to, and they're like, oh my God, I've got to shield, and there's a self town. Look at that self town. Noticed that before. I've got to do something about that. But no, actually, the shielding is always the last resort. And this is more kind of high end. And you do need a meter if you're shielding. The golden rule with shielding is always to measure first, then you shield, then you measure it again. And this is, more complicated, but I can share some other very quick tips if you want with regard to cell phones and Wi-Fi.
Let me ask you real first. You know how I know there's a lot of people have had these different discs that you put on your cell phone and supposedly it protects you. Do you think they work, or are they valuable or not?
So what I recommend, what I've been talking about for years now, is conventional EMF protection, which is using meters. It's achieving a measurable reduction in exposure. And then when you've done all that, when you've done the when you've gone through all that in your home, in your workplace, if you can, whatever you can bring in, and using your cell phone more safely again, then perhaps you can introduce these devices. The problem is with these devices, it's difficult to actually know if they are working. And we can develop, because we can't measure very easily, and we can develop a sense of well-being and protection, which doesn't actually exist. And that's the problem. So it's not that I'm against these devices, but there is a place for these devices, but it goes right behind the conventional EMF protection I'm working. Because believe me, when I became sick, what did I do? I went out and I bought everything I could. I spent thousands on these devices and nothing brought me any relief. So that's why I started down this road, and that's why I share this protocol, because what I'm sharing works.
Okay. Well, that's good information. I know a lot of people say, oh, I just got this thing on my phone. It's probably okay. Okay, what else besides a cell phone? I think cell phone is probably the main one that people always keep it on themselves, and you want to keep it away from your body. What else besides cell phones are something that we need to be concerned about and limit our exposure?
So yeah, cell phones are a big one. Just very briefly on cell phones, then you want to be having the greatest distance between you and that cell phone. So that would mean using it on a speakerphone, using an air tube headset. So that's like a wire, but with an air tube in it. And using it on airplane mode as much as possible. Prefer texting to talking. So very, very quickly, those are some tips for that. Beyond that, obviously the big one is Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi, because everybody's got Wi-Fi. Everybody loves Wi-Fi, and I know it's great, and you can, watch Netflix in bed or whatever. But Wi-Fi is bad news, unfortunately. I'm sorry to be a party pooper, but why? Because it's radio frequency, microwave radiation. And you could argue that it's worse than a cell phone because it's 24/7.
Right.
Like the cell phone, you can switch it off, and hopefully you don't you take it to bed with you. Although I know a lot of people do, and they use it as alarm clocks, and no, not good idea. Buy an alarm clock. Put the cell phone away. Put it on airplane mode. You do not want that cell phone in your bedroom. And so Wi-Fi. My number one recommendation with Wi-Fi is to get rid of it. You don't want Wi-Fi. Why do you want Wi-Fi? Internet is way quicker, more secure with an Ethernet connection, with a cable connection. Yeah, there are wires.
I totally agree. I don't use Wi-Fi. I'm plugged straight into the cable, and well, but also though, you could turn it off at night if you think you have to.
So that's the set. Yeah. So if you don't want to go to the time, trouble, expense, although it's no great expense Ethernet, but you turn it off at night. And a good way to do that is to buy a little mechanical timer. And I had this idea one Christmas about 10 years ago with a Christmas tree to switch off the Christmas tree lights at night. And that's where I got the idea for this so you'd use the same thing. Why do I say that? Because you can go in the settings and have it automated. But as soon as you get a download, a software update, it's going to default back to having the Wi-Fi on all the time. So Wi-Fi is really bad news for you, your family, and particularly at night. So either the Ethernet if you can, or using a mechanical timer to have it auto switch off every night. That way you don't have to think about it.
Okay, very good. So just to kind of sum it up then, the most important thing is to really deal with your cell phone, and not keep it on your body, not keep it next to you, and turn it off, and don't just have it constantly next to you. And the same thing with Wi-Fi. I think those are the two big ones. Is there any way to protect yourself against all these 5G towers and all the things that they're putting up, or any way to protect yourself from that?
So we're going back to shielding. So you can shield, but the way to do this. And so people think, yeah, well, there's this, look at that cell tower, I've got to do something about that. But the way EMFs work, it's about distance. It's these devices which are in close proximity. And, I've spoken to a number of building biologists and people out in the field about this, and they're all saying the same thing. There's like they're going out to see people, and these people are really sick and very, very electrically sensitive. And they've got this cell tower outside, and the folks are saying, yeah, what can we do with the 5Gs coming in, and what can we do to protect ourselves? And yet they're walking around and they're using a cell phone, and they've got homes and they've got the Wi-Fi. So it's all of these things you need to do first. It's these things in your immediate environment. That's what you need to deal with. These many, many things you have control over. Do all that first. Then you can worry about that 5G tower or whatever it is, or 4G or whatever it is, that cell tower or the neighbor's Wi-Fi or whatever it is, by doing some shielding and stuff. But that is more advanced. And again, shielding is a last resort. And the reason I say that is because when you shield, you introduce, what you were saying about nature. Nature is a great healer. So what do you do when you shield? You introduce these man-made materials, more man-made materials into your environment. You do shield yourself from these man-made frequencies, but you also shield yourself from nature's frequencies. And this is one of the subjects of this top summit that I'm on at the moment. I'm in the middle of, where I explore all this theme of energy and vibration and this vibrational world that we live in. And there are frequencies like the Schumann resonance, for instance, this natural frequency of the Earth, about 7.83 hertz, which happens to coincide with lower brainwave frequencies. There are these natural frequencies, magnetic fields of the Earth, which we need, which are absolutely vital, essential for life. And we're actually energy beings of frequency. So if we start protecting ourselves from these man-made frequencies, unfortunately, then we're shielding out these other frequencies at the same time.
That's such a good point.
That's really what to be very, very careful on that.
That's such a good point. So yeah, it's called earthing, right? I go out and walk barefoot either on the beach or in the park, grass every day. That's such an important point. That's so good. So I want to remind you, all of our viewers, that this training, this video, it comes with a PDF, so be sure and check that out, because there you'll find all the contact information. We get a hold of Lloyd and go to his website and get lots more information. And if you need to, you probably can get some coaching from him. So I definitely be sure and check out the PDF where you'll see all he has to offer on his website for you. So Lloyd, that was so good. I think it's so helpful, and I hope that we really got the message out to people that this is a problem that we need to deal with, and we need to wake up and not turn our head away and just say, oh, So we gotta pay attention to this, because if you are having some symptoms that no one knows what it is, this definitely could be a big factor in that. So I want to thank you so much for all that great information and for your great work. And now we're down to the very last question, and this is the hardest question of all that I ask all the experts, is what ideas do you have to actually get people inspired and motivated to actually take action on on your recommendations?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I always say to people, don't believe what I say. Just go and do your own research on this, because this is just so in your face obvious. As soon as you start looking at this, and there is a big cover up here about that, and I don't really talk about that, but because people say, well, how is it I've not heard about this before? Well, because there's so much, again, we're back to the money. There's so much money at play. And what you were saying about the 5G, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're telling us all this about how much better our life's going to be with 5G and everything. But it's really about them. It's about big corporations making money. And I've not got nothing against people making money,
Right.
but at what expense? Let's know the
Right.
truth. And people do not know the truth about this. And the truth has been dissimulated for a long time. And I talk about, so I've written a book, which is actually called, I've got it here, which is called EMF Practical Guide. And I talk about this in the book. And I'm, you know, going back to the 1950s, we've got a very clear, it's very documented this, how the research has been covered up, and researchers that have been working on this, being told, well, look, listen, you know, either shut up or shut down or go away, you know, if you don't play along. And okay, that's all very well and good, but we don't want people to know about this, basically. And right back to the 1950s, and this is still going on today. And again, I keep highlighting this is about how it affects children, because this is what troubles me the most is children are very vulnerable, and we have a responsibility, even if we're not a parent, for our future generations. So that's what I recommend that people do, is just get curious about this. Don't believe everything I'm saying to be God's truth, but just get curious about this, start asking questions, dig a little bit, and boy, will you find.
Yeah, that's so good, Lloyd. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think make the point about how it's going to affect your children can make people wake up and pay attention. And, you know, as you know, I think there's a whole shift in consciousness going on right now in the world. And this is just part of it, you know, about our health. And that's what this whole project's about. It's not only just to give you, you know, some great information that can help you to be healthier and live longer, but it's really about raising our whole consciousness of how we need to not only create better health for ourselves, but for everyone on this planet and for the health of our environment. And all these things go together. And how we're living, you know, we need to wake up, and we don't need to keep killing each other and fighting over all these things and making it all about the money. So this whole project is all about raising people's consciousness of how we can take care of ourselves and take care of our planet as well.
And just to interrupt very briefly, you know, you look great, by the way, and people take a lot of trouble to, you know, work out and eat the right foods and put creams and stuff on their body, and yet they're abusing themselves all day long with this technology. Exactly. And what does the science say also that it's doing to our bodies, to our cells? It's causing premature aging. How it impacts the cells and the cell membranes, it makes them go brittle. It affects cellular communication. It disrupts cellular communication. This is all a perfect recipe for living your latter years in life in very poor health, frankly. And this is what's already happening. Inflammation. It's a big driver for inflammation. That's a huge problem, I know, all over the world, but particularly in the US. So if you are health conscious, then you need to really factor in this information that I'm sharing with you today.
So well said. Thank you so much for that. I just want to add, yeah, I actually keep my cell phone in my car, and I use it mostly as a phone, or if I need to text. You know, I don't need to have it on me all the time. It's just crazy. I had to say this, you know, why people are so attached to these devices. And like, if you and I are talking, and then if your phone rings, you know, why is that more important to pick up and see who that is? Because you're already talking to somebody else. So I think this is the message that we need to get people out to people, you know, to be a little more conscious of how we're living and how we're thinking and what we're doing. So again, I want to thank you for your great work. This is really something that's really important and really helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rico. Thank you so much. And thanks again for the invitation, this opportunity to share this information. Really appreciate it.
And I was in with, again, I like to say, you know, knowledge without action is useless. So take advantage of what you just learned today, and take advantage of all this whole project. All of our experts will give you some early information that you can trust. It's the right information. And if you follow their advice, it'll make a big difference in your overall health and well-being. I promise you that. Thanks for being here.